Everyone ready?
What do you get governance?
Yes, sir.
I'm is that I find it interesting that staff may put themselves. Facing the wall, facing the stack.
Yeah, well, we heard their HVAC is impressive here, so.
Be daydreaming. Like some of us may have chosen. Closest to the food. Yes. Call the meeting order and Ian is. In the honor. Please.
I'll do the roll call. Dr. Derek Aday. John Anzavino. William Beal.
Here.
Taryn Bryce Rowland if she's running late. Dr. Sarah Calverick. Renee Daniels. Bruce Davis. Jackie Davis. Jan Urquhart. Val Folds. Joel Griffin. Lisa Hull. Dr. Shannon Kennedy. Kim McClellan. Rob Cortell. Jeff Sabursky. Lindsay Watson. Linda Worrell. Kimberly Young. All right, that is a quorum.
All ended up not being. And. This thing, so we have people. MC Watson. And that those residences that 60 miles. This being 60 miles. That's what Senate Val Holt. Sarah Calverick. Matter something in. And then Jan Urquhart find herself in Idaho. That covered both matter and 60 miles.
She said she'd dial in from the campground if she could.
If she could, she'll,
So,
yeah.
Any of them? Okay, here. Skip over introduction. No, that's where I am. I think everybody that's being on the thing. Anyone here that is not on the council that wishes to press council. All. If we receive any requests or
We did not.
Senate of the 8 minutes. Any changes, corrections?
No.
Oh. Okay, motion, okay, second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any objection? Well, move forward then, we have Tom Hagan here. Jenny.
Yeah, so I'll just give some backstory. So we've been talking with John and his team for a little over a year now. Gen Edge is the manufacturing extension partnership for Virginia as part of NIST. He's going to kind of give an overview and talk about potential synergy, but we've been talking about potential Go Virginia projects. They have done and are currently trying to do some projects in other regions. We see supply chain as an opportunity. We see kind of harnessing our advantages, specifically in the manufacturing space. That's kind of primarily where they live. So John's just gonna, like I said, give an overview and talk about some of the things that they've done with Go Virginia to this point.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ian, for that very kind introduction. Again, my name is John Hagelin. My official title is Regional Growth Manager with Gen Ed, that's code or account manager. That means I am the focal stations and working with us to provide potential services. So next chart. So the first question always is, well, who is Gen Ed? We view ourselves as a pseudo economic development agency, but on this slide, we are not trying to recruit firms in any locality. Once firms arrive and open up, that is the point where we wish to engage to find out if there are opportunities for us to work together. Typically, we focus on manufacturing, engineering, technology. That doesn't mean that's the only place we work. We work with health systems. We are part of the Build Back Better activity that's going on down to Petersburg. So we try to maintain a very broad opportunity for engaging many types of entities beyond this manufacturing firm. We are part of we call a NIST manufacturing extension partnership. I'll show you a map of that on the next chart. We're governed by board of trustees who are appointed by the governor, and there are 25 and 30 folks on our team. Next chart, please. This next chart is an image of the United States. We are depicting that within each of the 50 states, including Puerto Rico, there is a NIST MEP. Because of that connectivity, that gives each of us access to resources from across the globe. And it also positions us to talk with companies who may have a plant in one location, headquarters somewhere else. We can leverage our MEP partner to still provide services to those types of firms. Next chart, please. So typically, we like to share our results, and these results are really what our clients say about us and the service we provide annually. And a survey is conducted that asks our clients over a period of time, what has the impact been a service? And you can see the numbers, I don't need to read them, but cumulatively over 5 billion and typically the return on investment is about 25-1, and that's been fairly consistent. And the piece that I'm very proud of personally is 6,000 jobs that we help based on our clients' feedback to either retain or help. Next chart. So it's one thing to have a nice chart that says, well, here are your survey results, but I wanted to provide you at least some insight into client testimonial and can't see the ones in the law. So these are just some client testimonials, and you can see areas where we help share their feedback. In one case, it was a product development and branding strategy. In another case, it was strategy and marketing. Another case was DoD supply chain, just as Ian, when he made the introduction. We help folks with certification, ISO 9001, 16949. And so these are success stories of what our clients have shared in the form of testimonial with regards to how the service provision and next concept. So how do we do? Well, we're broken up into what I would call 5 very broad core service provision arms. Our advanced manufacturing, which really is focusing in on how to help companies who are struggling with labor shortages consider the possibility of advanced manufacturing techniques to address that issue. On road, companies who express interest to us, they're looking to grow their revenue. What are the potential opportunities there? IT and support is interesting, and I'll show another chart where cybersecurity has been an area that we've been fortunate enough to help many companies, particularly those who are participating in the DoD supply chain. Operations probably are more the traditional things that many of you may be aware of. Companies who need things like lean services, they're looking to improve their margins, they're trying to figure out how we eat more out of our existing manufacturing capability. And as we discuss supply chain, and we've been fortunate recently, our partnership with BEDP, we've been able to connect with companies, helping them not only look at their supplier performance, but help them in making very good selections. Next chart, Sarah. So I did want to come today and not give you at least some pictorial representation of at least some of the engagements we've been fortunate to have here in Go Virginia Region 6. So the way you read the chart is on the left-hand side are the logos of those companies that we've existed in cybersecurity. And so again, in those cases, we help them to look at the DFARS 7012 risk assessment and to help them achieve some preparatory activity towards their CMMC certification, which will soon come down the pike. So we're very happy to have participated and worked with these companies, and hopefully one or two of those logos are familiar. On the right-hand side, we have a recent program called Go Virginia Supply Chain Reshoring, and a handful of companies that we've worked with to help them to grow their business, to help them in seeking out new supplier, to help them to find better solutions to grow their business. And we're thankful that Go Virginia Region 6 helped participate in that activity as well. And then kind of on the bottom, there are a couple of other activities. I ran DOD. We went out and touched a couple of folks who were just new emerging businesses. So again, I wanted to give you folks a sense that we've had some engagement. We're very appreciative about with that. You know, don't build a chart. I want to have many more logos and here of companies that hopefully, you know, with your partnership and others, we can reach out to and hopefully find some areas of collaboration and success. Next chart. So I wanted to also make you all aware of the new Gen Edge Alliance offering. So let me talk about the right-hand side of the chart first, if you don't mind. So we recently kicked off our Gen Edge Alliance, and the resources we are there are our Connects Marketplace in Virginia, which connects to Connects Marketplace in the United States. And basically companies who join and get access into the Connects Marketplace can start out opportunities. So if there's a particular company with a specific makes code or supply raw supply they're looking for, they can find them there. There's also an opportunity if they wish to bid, they're looking for someone, they say, hey, I'm looking for somebody with this kind of resource, they can do that as well. Along with the Connected Marketplace, we have something called the new learning management system. And again, what we find is that companies are looking for seamless, easy ways to not only give their employees an opportunity to take a course, but to track that as well. And so again, we think that there's been some interest there. And so that's a part of the Gen Edge Alliance as well. Then Alliance number 3 is our manufacturing task. And really the whole concept here is we're trying to provide based on our internal resources and some of our third-party industry insights, helping to address manufacturing issues. And the team came up with a motto, get in, get support, and get more. Right, so really helping people position themselves in a way to do that. On the left-hand side, we are also putting a maniacal emphasis on our emerging business program. Our definition of that program is companies who have employees of 20 or less. And what we're trying to provide them is an initial assessment. We're providing an engagement that will allow us to further understand their needs. And for some of them, depending on their size, maybe it's a lighter touch as to what they can service offering they can get. So that's the very, very high level overview I want to share with each of you about the Gen Edge Alliance. Next chart, sir. So I probably should have started here because let me mention this, mission, we want to be Virginia's best resource to help manufacturing and industry innovate, compete, and grow. What is our vision? We want to be the go-to resource that accelerates manufacturing and technology, industrial clusters and quality jobs. And what the understanding of the role both Virginia plays in that cluster development, it makes sense for us to continue to strengthen and grow our partnership with this team. Next concept. So often each of us are out, we have company connections and we hear these questions, right? How can I run operations more efficiently? How do I bring new ideas and products to market? How do I win more contracts? How do I get into DOD? Upskill and retain employees and all resources. And in some cases, it's just a connection to resources that they may be unaware of. When it's applied one day, they say, hey, John, I'm looking to expand. Okay, great. Have you had a chance to have a conversation with your economic development team? Well, no, I don't even know who my person is. Okay, let me make that introduction because they are in a position to help you on building and provide other resources along that. So last chart, Sarah. So how do we want to help folks answer those questions? That as you meet with companies and companies reach out to you, please feel forward if it fits within things I've shared to provide our contact information, and we'll do our best to try to help them solve some of their issues. Questions?
Oh, thank you for I made this meeting an accident, never heard guys murdered.
That's not unusual to say.
Well, and it's relevant. There's other things. Remember, for techniques in Virginia who says information. This is my next agenda. Question I have is how do you pay? Issue power in my state, a client, something they want to part and but it's very I said they pay for it and get member.
Yeah, great question. So hopefully, I don't know if there's someone on the phone, but the question is, how does a person or company become involved in the Gen Edge Alliance? And then just ongoing, how do things progress forward? So we receive, and Sarah, could you back up to four and try to answer this thing? Oh, so the little view there in the right gives you a sense for how we're funded. So we're funded, first of all, at the federal level through NIST MEP. We're also funded by the state of Virginia. Okay, and you can see those two pieces make up roughly about 40% or something. But then also what you can see is that we work with other federal grants, which, for example, when we had our Go Virginia Reshoring program, a part of the way we were able to offer that cost sharing was through funding that we had received from NIST through CARES Act, along with funding that we had received from Go Virginia. And we were able to take those together and to deploy a program where in that particular case, there was a very streamlined cost sharing. Okay. In other cases, beyond grants, there are fees that we engage with clients. So that is essentially that piece of the model, specifically with regards to the Gen Edge Alliance. Folks can go to our website and sign up. I'll be very honest and say we had a free sign up across the nation up until I think about the end of June. But if folks just want to search folks in Virginia, they can still join Virginia free of charge. If they wish to have access outside of Virginia, there's a nominal fee that we're charging. And a part of that is to kind of help us help them with hands-on resources and servicing to help them figure out not only using the tool, but helping them to get to the answers that they seek out.
That is the nominal fee.
The nominal fee for Beyond Virginia to get access to states all across our country, about $500.
A. So. How is that?
Yeah, so the way that, and I'll go ahead and invite Bill on. But essentially, we have a conversation individually with clients to assess their needs and what they're looking for, and then based on that needs assessment, we determine.
The average engagement.
Average consulting engagement last year is now $30,000. See the bulk of what we do charge fees, and our fees are generally what you would get from a consultant. Because, John's service is paid for, or administrative operations essentially paid for. So essentially, we work on a correct cost.
Other questions?
One thing we might want to mention on the this tax arguments. Last year, Congress provided us additional money to really begins to help build around the manufacturing supply chain. There really is no referenceable standard that allows us to identify capabilities businesses for skills. For instance, currently right now, we're helping application capital, advanced smart project. That job that we have there is to help build a plus supply chain, and make sure it's tracked. Don't bring in robust and development. Build. That's actually the only effort. States bring pharmaceuticals back here. Where the rest of the farm. Okay, since the risk of this, 90% of active ingredients that are used in pharmaceutical work, it's generic or over the counter, are now produced in China. Think COVID was bad. Think about in this situation. We get ourselves to a war signal. China shuts off. Just our blood pressure. 100% of blood pressure medication is made. Millions. One out of 6 Americans. And that's the type of risks that we have. So next marketplace that develops as part of a solution for each MEP in the country, Puerto Rico is trying to get this intelligence network built. So let's say you all have a company here that has a need over the next couple of years. That company has a need. Bring a supplier on, or whatever reason. Let's say it's because getting to worry about risks from these imports will actually help in that process. That service is no cost. That's for because of the importance that it has for our national standing or national position. The items. It's a pretty good deal. The other thing I probably worth mentioning here is, if you look at your manufacturing supply chain, there's about 600 companies, let's say. Those companies are not open traditional factories. They're manufacturing, they're engineering, they're R&D, they're advanced manufacturing. Generally speaking, they're pretty small. So we talked about that emerging business program, like in most of our regions, it applies to the neighbors. They have. And it's kind of a nice program, because what it does is it provides essential services up front. Identify the owner operator, it's the best way. That owner operators to look at personal improvements. Then what we do is set them up, those who, have identified their need. Have done some diligence, we set them up with some training. Like showed you on yesterday for the it's all over, probably. But more importantly, what we do is identify their function. That better approach will actually help it work. Essentially, develop to improve their personal behavior. Because ultimately, when you're small business makes sense. So, on those boxes, the person writes checks, they do lots. So we want to make sure that those things are. The other thing to keep in mind is manufacturing. On this state last year, at 5% increase in employment. I wish we had better. But over the last 6 years, after we take out 1 year, 1.5 year bomb, due to the pandemic, manufacturing supply chain has grown steadily in Virginia year over year. Brought about 340,000 employees. Contributes about 14% of state GDP. And generally speaking, those jobs continue to get higher quality. There's no longer just for to employ people to patterns. We're going to figure out how to get a lot of that. We're going to have an individual management robots. So what's occurring in manufacturing today is changing very quickly. Yeah, and I really apologize. I'm sitting. I live over like Dr. Sherwood had him. Sure. Sir.
That's great. Yeah, 30 staff members. Have other consultants that
We have dozens. We have very fortunate to have extremely good subject matter expertise. So it ranges from businesses like the Prince Triangle. A lot of small individual proprietorships. Well, it's a very, very strong model. The other thing is we've got 50 other MVP centers. Those MVP centers also staff plus we have a real nice but about 70% of their parties we use are actually registered small businesses.
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. We need to cut it off. Become more. Yeah, that's okay. Thank you. Next up is Mal. Our.
And Carrie.
Very much.
make that bigger.
I can.
Like these first.
It's also in your packet.
Yeah, it'll be in your packet too. The slides are.
Yeah.
I'm Carrie Worsnott. Valerie Tuttle is on our Zoom call, as well as Sarah Bean, who's the educator behind this project. I'm just going to provide a brief overview and then and let them also participate in the conversation as well. This I'm here to talk about a small pilot project that Virginia Tech and Sunrise Sea Farm, which is the consulting firm that Sarah Bean on. So really promote careers in agriculture with the aquaculture industry. And I think the best way to just to show what we've done in summers pictures, so have a little 2-minute video. Send at the summer.
Not showing it, sorry, hold on. Right.
Again, it was we had a partnership. You could put the slide back.
Yeah.
Oh. Thanks. No problem. So we had a partnership with Virginia Tech Center for Economic. Virginia Tech. Industry partners, recruiting the aquaculture industry into the to participate in the partnership. And then Sunrise Sea Farm, which is consultant firm that Sarah Beam, our educator, is part of, and number 10, the aquaculture. The aquaculture industry served on an advice board by the council on the curriculum and really regarding safety. They had their internships and the education needs that they would have. Our industry partners that you saw in the pictures provided tours. And then they also hosted that for an internship. Somewhere between 60 and 100 hours. 5 internship experiences that they're at their businesses. The students, we had 22 students enroll and 14 that completed online 18 online music modules that took place the spring of their school year. Independent, it was independent learning that they participated in. And then once those were completed, they participated in a 1-week long camp at one at our campus on the Northern Neck at Warsaw campus. And then after that, they had their internship experiences. We are currently undergoing the evaluation process right now. To have support badge on that. This has been a really wonderful project. We've been very pleased with it. It's been a great introduction to the aquaculture industry. With that, I'm not sure how well Melanie and Sarah could hear, but I'm gonna questions of that.
Yeah, one. Thank you for the other slide. Yes,
They were one of our partners.
yes, but they may be. Nice. I think somebody is maybe involved, can't do it. Well, what age? High school or middle?
They were high school students.
Okay, so can't do it, it's yeah. First grade, middle school, math. Couldn't get a whole group creating a STEM category.
Yeah.
For nurse areas. But it was just not like this. I just fell in love.
And
Yeah, it's teaching.
And Hut has been in a lot of those.
There.
yeah, we've been in there since the beginning.
One of them is suppose use the. This way we're taking. It's presence. Cheating. Physics, weather. Yeah, chemistry, everything else, and also look up, rate up items. You know, science. What's that?
I would turn that to Sarah to talk a little bit about the curriculum. She really did introduce quite a bit of that.
Hi, it's a little difficult to hear on this one. The curriculum was designed on basic shellfish aquaculture principles that should apply to any oyster, shellfish kind of growing environment that walk the students through everything from the benefits of oyster aquaculture to the ecosystem and to the industry and the local environment and local communities, all the way through the biology, the industry practices, careers in aquaculture, and safety for the interns who are working in the, with the industry partners. And I think in our next iteration will be, editing and improving, but it was really well received by students. And it seems like they had a good preparation for their real world hands-on experience. So that's sort of how we designed it to give them the basics that they needed to understand oyster aquaculture in our region and to be knowledgeable young employees.
It is being worked on right now. Have a survey out today. We fact is like that.
So I expect.
We've been fighting our grant in September.
And you're gonna share it. And you also, one last question, are you also wanting regulatory stuff stuff like talking about the fact. 17th century law. Personal trading. Start raising. I don't know, four departments.
I would have to throw that with Sarah. Did we do any of the legislation? Discuss any history of aquaculture in your class?
We did talk about things like NIMBYism, you know, and how aquaculture needs to fit in with the community in a knowledgeable and collegial, you know, like a way of being a good steward and a good neighborhood partner and knowing your community. We talked about a lot of water quality and shellfish sanitation and how the industry partners with VMRC and also the university research component of what VIMS is doing, and even outside of Virginia and University of Maryland, that kind of thing. So we really tried to get a serious breadth for the students to understand not just the nuts and bolts, but also the context of local aquaculture scene and how it's important for them as young employees to be knowledgeable of the environment that they're working in their community with respect to fitting into waterfront property, having good fact-based knowledge to communicate with people about what they're doing, and also the entirety of the aquaculture scene, which goes from research and regulation and into the industry aspects. So we really tried to cover that entire spectrum.
Bob Allen, online, is that right?
No, they're creating a.
So I thought Allen, so. That's.
That's different.
That's Jason Learning.
How does the staff? Will this connect?
Right now. There is an interest in expanding on the future. Having sure. Well, not, you know,
More actually, this all. One state staff. In it.
Yeah, so this is just aquaculture specific, and again, this was a pilot, so part of this, one of the main parts was developing the curriculum. And then there's the piece with the internships that were tied to this. The Stafford project is a partnership with Jason Learning. That includes, that's not just aquaculture. Aquaculture is part of that, but Jason Learning project is more geared towards career exploration in the middle school and early high school level. So that includes all of our industry clusters, central to Stafford, but including school districts in the northern neck. So there is some overlap between these projects, but there's much less of a focus in the Jason Learning project on aquaculture than this particular projects. So.
Everybody should
Yes.
get this some kind of sequence. Before somehow.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I will just say, I think one of the things that we do in terms of just like thinking about pathways is having that initial career exposure that leads to actual courses in high school that lead to work-based learning experiences at the end of high school and in early college. And that's kind of the approach here. So it takes that multifaceted approach to get to the issue of workforce.
So, related to the students, so the students that 14 that completed the program, are these students going to be, they come back for more advanced course, do they come back and help with the next course, or these, to like graduate or right into the workforce?
we had a combination of students who were interested in careers. Most of them are interested in going to college. Biology or it really did have very much a hands-on approach and applicable to student or in that, or. I'm thinking, who wants?
Sure, so as you move forward into the pilot. Office, there are students who will say they want to get this experience, to differentiate the resumes, get a biology degree, get any number of athletic-based sort of degree programs. Then there are ones who say, this gets me ready to go right into the workforce, but I'm not interested in it. It's actually not certification or got some training, right? So that's that. Are those two different paths in your mind, or are they sort of coalesce?
I think they can prepare us for either. I should say that they are. Both there.
I think I can,
What they've done. Go ahead.
I think I can add just a little bit to that. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it all, but the program is designed to not just focus on students who like have a post-secondary pathway into college. So it should kind of meet the needs of anyone who's interested in a potential future career in aquaculture. So it's designed to be, it is academic by nature because it's learning about biology and the field and everything, but you can start off and just graduate and go right into the field and work as an 18-year-old high school graduate, or it can pique your interest and maybe have you move into a program in biology in college and see through even to your PhD in aquaculture. So it's really broad, very broad in scope, and the hope is that the outcomes will sort of filter into the many different niches that are needed in the aquaculture industry, some of which are academic, some of which are marketing and sales, some are, actual scientific research, and then some are out there in the field lugging cages, growing animals, and running boats. So we really tried to hit the broad swath to the greatest extent possible.
My husband and I are brave voices for this. Very personal, very dear to my heart. So I appreciate this. I think it is really important that there are people pathways. Because small oyster right now need help buckets. The larger farms that need more advanced programs. Are you guys doing anything with this project to tailor your parenting to make sure the opportunities are set up for these kids, or their college path where it might be somebody's got a marine biology program, they've got a hatchery, they'd be a better fit than a small farm, but for a young student that isn't in that college path, has no interest in the microbiology part of it. Is that being done now? Tailoring with the placement?
Placement was a challenge, but it worked out really nicely because we took responses that students gave us on their application and their local geographic fit, and we tried to put them with farms that had proximity, that had interest with the students' goals. Some kids wanted to be out on the water and working with cages, and some wanted to be in the hatchery, spawning larvae and raising algae. So we also were able to get a group of industry partners who had a lot of different kinds of outfits. We had very small micro farms, we had just hatcheries, and some hatcheries were quite large, and then we had larger partners like Great Wicomico or Little Wicomico who have a fairly large operation. So we really were focused on training students to understand the aquaculture industry. And so the next iteration, hopefully, if we continue this program, which we're very interested in doing, would be more of those kinds of explorations, guided by our industry partners, because we're really here for them. We want to help create a pipeline of well-trained, knowledgeable young people who can go in and fill in all of those kinds of needs. So we welcome that kind of feedback in the next iteration to focus more on what those needs are for the industry. And Mallory can probably chime in on that as well.
Yeah, I can just add to that for a second that we are in the process of receiving evaluations from both the students and the industry partners on their participation. And what I've initially already seen in that feedback is kind of to the point of for us, for making this a best fit for our industry and really focusing on them as a value add for this program. We want to really show the students again in Sarah's SPAT program, that 1 week kind of shows the hatchery and it's showing that full picture of what this looks like as an industry. And for their internships, that way they have exposure to all those elements. So they can best, actually do the work when they have their internship placements with their industry partners. But our industry partners are telling us, for this to be, best use of my time, I really want a student that's going to focus on this specific part of the process. And so I do think that that's probably where we will do a little tweaking and focusing as we take this maybe to another request for continued programming, is to figure out how to tweak that to make it better meet the needs of our industry partners. Because if they're really devoting time and effort into training someone to do this work, I think that their thought was, if I can know that they're only working in the hatchery, or if they're doing this specific piece, hopefully the SPAT program is giving the students a good view of all the pieces of it from a high level. But for their internship, they're really becoming kind of more experts in one specific space. So I think that's probably something we'll look into a little bit as the program progresses.
The question I have is, Sarah and I talked a little bit at an FOR event about the program. At that time, I think there was a collaboration with the Bay Workforce Consortium, but I didn't know if that has changed in the last month at all. I know
Yeah.
the Bay.
We did have, we had somebody reach out. He attended one of our final days of the camp. With the youth. And he has reached out.
Okay, so because I know they're working on their own curriculum and it seems like a good opportunity to collaborate. Okay. I was visited by somebody who told me they were. It was a very interesting experience, so we'll think about. Yeah. Yeah. So it's
how many came from the governor's school, how many from the school center, and how many from regular?
I'll repeat it since I'm closest to the microphone. How many came from the governor's school or from the technical school or just from the school systems, the school divisions was the question.
I think we had 4 from Governor School and the rest were from our divisions. And we had really good participation from the majority of divisions. And then I think because we're new, we had a couple of divisions that were not able to find students this year. So that's one of our really important goals for the future, is to give the public a better understanding of what the program is and try and get more students involved.
You know, we worked primarily with I that in each of the areas. So they did. And then Sarah did quite a bit of reviews as well. I saw that. Well, thank you very much. Fun project and well received by the students and.
Thank you. Next up, Andy.
Standard.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I can use the mic, but I don't think it's doing anything. Does this do
You may
anything?
have to just check if it's on.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
We're going to pass it around for questions as well so that our online participants can hear the questions better.
My name's Annie, so I'm a program administrator with the Department of Housing and Community Development. Our administrators is assigned to one region, so I'm Region 6's main point of contact. And so I'm going to go through our recent work. As you may know, the match policy expired in the last week, and so we're working on developing guidance, and that's going to impact your future match for future project development. These are the same slides that were presented at the state board, so I'll just run through them pretty quickly and give you time for questions. So just a little bit of background, April 2020 with the pandemic, that's when the match requirements were first relaxed. It was due to fiscal and economic distress caused by the pandemic. It definitely helped with project development and it was appreciated by a lot of regions, but unfortunately it was never really meant to be a permanent state of things, and it was set to expire at this recent board meeting. And so what the board voted on was to keep the current match policy until October 1st. So any projects at the upcoming September meeting would be under this relaxed match, and then moving forward, it's going to be with the new match policy. And then this is just state code. We're required to have match. We're bound by state code. If you, that is in the slide. And go. So this is just kind of to show you pre-pandemic, what a match looks like, and then what without policy, as you see, we do have a lot of local matching required. And then I think the big thing is previously for capita, it was 20% or $1,000, whichever is greater. We are eliminating $1,000. That is one thing that we are able to do with this new match guidance we're developing. And so this is going to be our new match moving forward. And what I'm about to talk about is two separate things. So total match and local match. Total match is the total project budget is your Go Virginia request. Total match amount. Local match is what's coming from the local needs. And so essentially what we're doing is developing the waiver process for both. So there will be ways if you're unable to get a project developed with the one-to-one match, there's going to be ways to work around that, and same with local match. That being said, we do really consider local match to be a key part of the Go Virginia program. It's really highly valued. I know that your council had pointed out that rural areas it's hard to get matched, so I'll talk through how to work in this new future. So in terms of total match, it's going to be a waiver process either for physical distress or extraordinary economic opportunity. So one of the, and this is all draft, the guidance in the draft, we're still working on it, but one of the ways that we think you're going to be able to get a 2-to-1 match for a project is if the majority of participating localities qualify for fiscal distress. So I think I have a map on. So this is region 6, and the it's kind of a double to the distress measure, so it's above average. So you'll see red or something close up. So if the project were to include at least majority of those localities, they would qualify for 2-to-1. And then we're working to begin of that, but this would be kind of the extraordinary economic opportunity side of things. So how we would qualify for 2-to-1, and that's going to be the majority local, majority partners. We're working on some way around increasing employment over state employment level, and then also newer emerging industry clusters and that are focused on the administration. That would be another way to qualify for food. So all that is to say, there is going to be one-to-one match projects, but there's going to be ways to request waiver processes to get the student. Yeah, I'm going to swap this. Who approves the waiver? It's going to be submitted with the state board. So your applications. The process of applications.
Get wait, meetings, and then on, and then we've got to back in and submit it.
No, it'll be with your application. So the application is developed as part of. With your waiver at the same time, and I hear the frustration, I. Understand the frustration, we are really, I mean, the point of having all these variety of. Opportunities to request a waiver is to provide you with flexibility to work on those 2-1 matches, so.
Running, I'm running some of the matters to the client. So like, I think we received an X, so we think give them.
To get, so that you know the waiver will be approved, is that? Right. Yeah, and I mean, that's something we're working through of, you know, how much we work with our support org staff, if we can give you, you know, preliminary go ahead. Yeah, and I hear that, and I can definitely take that back and say we need to be able, it's a lot of time and effort to develop a project. I understand that, and it wouldn't be acceptable if it's then, you know, sent to the board and then your waiver is approved. So with that one, we will address that for sure.
Those counties ran.
Right.
Presumption. Become deny it.
I think the 50% or more localities, that's a pretty simple. If the localities at the time of the application are one of those distressed ones, that's going to be approved.
It's just the extraordinary economic opportunity that would.
Yeah, but if all of your matches can be industry partner, I mean, there will be more clearly defined parameters around those, and if you meet them, then I think we can assume it would be approved. But I totally understand the length of project development and not wanting things to move forward if the waiver won't be approved.
So. Non-state cap. They're disciplines. They don't get no medic pass. The way to manage. You know, if Lancaster, then but something.
Mhm.
Because they've already been identified.
Yeah, well, it'll just be a form, you know, we check this box, we meet this requirement, and then that's your 2-1.
And the other happened. I did
Prove that
the performance. If my friend Rob's favorite county, Matthew, she's not physically expressed, if they make an application, then. Or waiver, it's not.
well, with the other locality, you know, it depends on if it's a 2-partner locality project and the other one is, then they would qualify.
We qualify on
50%, yeah,
70.
50. It can be, so yes, in kind, it's in kind or cash, it's not just cash match. And that will also, we're about to talk about local match as well. Okay, so the waiver process, and this is, again, we really believe local match is an important part of the Go Virginia process, cash or in kind, it's not cash only. The way this waiver process is it has to demonstrate fiscal stress. So you go to the map on the next slide. So the marker we're using for this is our DHCD revenue capacity. And as you can see, none of the localities would qualify for fiscal distress in Region 6. I did not come up with that methodology. You can argue with me. I will have no argument against you. So you're welcome to look at their methodology. I'm definitely in no place to describe to you how that was come up with, but that is what we're using. That being said, if you go to the next slide. So fiscal stress, that's a little bit on methodology. Sorry, next slide. So we will have a waiver process for fiscal or for local match as well. So what that is going to mean is that you're going to need to show that a locality was approached and that they're unable to contribute the local match requirement. So it is gonna be work either way. You're either approaching a locality to ask for match funding, or you're approaching them, they say they can't do it, and they need to submit a letter that says they were approached and they can't contribute at this time. So administrative, but we're hoping that it's gonna provide everyone an opportunity to kind of get ahead of working with their localities. And so even though you see that map that you wouldn't qualify for the 50% or more fiscally distressed localities, there is a way to work around the local match requirement. And again, a reminder that there's a lot of different ways to get local match, cash or in kind.
That can be in kind.
Yes, in kind. So we're working on it now. It'll be presented at the September meeting.
Made by DHCD. The adverse impact this may have.
We haven't done any projections. We did do a couple of, and if you want to look at our slides from the board meetings, there did a couple interesting breakdowns of match by investment strategy. So that was interesting because we were able to see that for site development projects, local match isn't a problem at all. We've actually gotten total over the 50% match. So it's kind of seeing where localities are able to contribute funding.
Change.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. And
Right.
Chair, if I could too on the match, it's brand new, but be aware of so that you can follow it. There's a brand new federal agency. It's the Southeastern Crescent Regional Commission. It has just been formed by Congress. Many of you are familiar with the Appalachian Regional Commission, runs Appalachia, I think, Maryland, Alabama. But it's freshly appropriated money that is for the same jurisdictions that you had up on the earlier map, where in our region, it's just our line. But there are federal monies that's going to be available to the project. For building the economy in those areas. Go Virginia can go towards the match for that project and vice versa. I'm sure. So it's just something to stay on top of that may be a match source coming in the very near future. The Southeastern Crescent Regional Commission plans.
Follow to that. So to follow on, either Sarah, we get more information. That organization, that program. Second thing. I know you're just a messenger, so stay with me. So, on the map it showed Stafford, Spotsylvania, Fredericksburg was stressed. So, and I can speak to Stafford, Spotsylvania specifically. But while we are out of COVID and while everyone's back to work, the distress issue continues because any cash reserves small businesses had, they spent to stay open. Any cash reserve localities went to those small businesses, grants, homes, employment offsetting, internships, anything else. So cash reserves at the local level are significantly depleted. While, it looks like we're out of this economic situation, there's still, there should be some consideration given to restocking, so to speak, right? Replenishing cash reserves, because we're just now getting better, and a lot of businesses are still struggling with not only employment issues, but power exchange. So just
I don't know, take that back.
Yeah, no, my job is to take back feedback and report it, so I totally hear everyone, and I think. Yeah. I can report that back, and so to be clear, that's the fiscal for local match that we're talking about, yeah. Yes.
The school division is on a local match.
And
Yes.
I don't want to put you on the spot. I know
Okay.
we talked about this, so I know that just generally, I think that around the extraordinary economic opportunity, you guys are kind of still fleshing out what those guidelines look like, because that is kind of I would imagine maybe an evolving area of waiver into the future as the program evolves.
Yeah,
But can you kind of talk about that a little more in depth? I know you mentioned it, but one of the things we talked about are sectors that align with initiatives or focuses out of the governor's office, but can you kind of talk about how you guys are perceiving that now as you go into the September board meeting?
yes, so I don't know if it's on my slides, but the state and the governor's office has recently released their Innovate framework. I don't know if anyone has seen that. It's Innovate, VA is capitalized. And so part of that is going to be, we're talking about if there's alignment with industry sectors within the Innovate framework, that could be an opportunity, extraordinary economic opportunity, qualify for match reduction. And that's pretty broad. They've identified 3 overarching sectors: knowledge work, professional tech, which would include professional and technical services, manufacturing, and then I'm not going to the third one, but yes, logistics and distribution. So that is going to be, we're kind of trying to figure out how we can align our extraordinary economic opportunity with how the administration is framing it, and I'm hoping that would provide a lot of flexibility within what we consider economic opportunities for your region.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. I hear the concern, and I do truly sympathize. I really understand that your region has an interesting layout and projects, and we're doing our best to, create flexibility, and that's my job, is to help you guys still develop projects. So we'll be working with you.
Annie is an honorary Region 6 staff.
We love Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very ball us is review contract talking issue. Same document. And prior. This would be a place for us to give us 10% discount. I think they I would say they my life. Good, you came out the package there, like that, geez. Any questions, comments? Gary, like. Yes, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? They will send it to me, so I. E-document.
I'll send it.
We'll get it.
I'll send it. Yep. Chip's already signed it.
Okay, so our budget. So I included a memo in your packet that kind of outlines the entire process we're looking at for this fiscal year. But essentially, we are allocated $250, we'll call it every grant year. So every July 1st, we're allocated $250. That's been the same every single year. That's the same for every region. That's for staff, for our capacity, our salaries, fringe, indirect, our travel, these meetings, everything that we do. As you guys know, we always have carryover to the tune of, some years it's been upwards of $200,000, $300,000. We're pulling from previous fiscal years. We're doing the same this year. We're carrying over less money. We're only carrying over from one fiscal year, so we'll call it grant year 2023. So what we've done, I've included an overall budget. Because typically when we carry over that money, we don't strategically allocate it. It's just where it was sitting the previous grant year. So what we've done, what staff has done in tandem with Chip and Kate is allocate the 250 and the carryover money in a strategic way. And then we also have, when we approve the budget, the DHCD process requires that we have this narrative that's in your packet. And the DHCD template that's in the packet as well. So there's the narrative. And then the templates on the next page. So essentially what I'd be asking you guys to do is approve this overall budget, which will allocate the money from grant year 2023 and 2024. Things that I would note in terms of allocations that you know, are maybe a little higher. So our travel's a little higher this year. We're getting more involved in the Virginia Economic Developers Association and International Economic Development Council. There's professional development opportunities there. We've also allocated more money for travel so that we can get out into the regions more. We've tried to increase that every year. As you guys know, we have, I think, the second largest geographic Go Virginia region. So trying to get out in the region at least 2 to 3, upwards of 4 times in each locality throughout the course of the year. And then the other piece, salary, fringe, and indirect. So that's just me 100%, Sarah at 70%. And then Chip, we get him 30 minutes a year. So we include him. So he's over. And then, yeah, everything else is pretty straightforward from other years. The other thing I have in here is some money allocated for the G&E plan update. So some of that money is going towards the retreat that we have later on today. We're doing kind of a light update to the growth and diversification plan this year. That's all I got.
But there any other yeah, here.
Yeah, so we've tried to, in this overall budget, excuse me, allocate it in the most strategic way possible. We still will be missing about $95,000 or so that's not allocated to anything specifically. It becomes difficult to spend that money in a prudent way. And we always have to have that approved by DHCD. So having something that meets that threshold is not always easy. So it's kind of a long-winded answer to say, yes, we always think about how to strategically spend it. We don't want to carry over the money because that always creates a complication in the budget cycle. But it does become kind of difficult to spend that in a prudent way. But it is our goal to spend it, and we have spent down on it quite a bit.
So this is separate. Allocated.
It is. It's just for capacity building, which is. So the grant money in the state budget, more or less, which, as we know, is not approved. So we have this in the financial report. We're getting a little over. So what did that end up being?
About 300,000.
Yeah, so yeah, we carried over a little over 300,000, and then we'll get a little over $1 million going into this fiscal year.
If they're gonna steal it again, state's gonna steal it.
Not that we've heard of.
It's $5 million excess.
Yeah, so no, nothing like last year at all. And in fact, what we've heard is the money through the Talent Pathways Initiative, which Jackie, the Workforce Development Board, has the first project there that we approved. Last December, there's actually going to be additional allocation to the regions for pathways for workforce development. So no.
Just wonder if and that's here.
Just a quick question, someone if they were to be to over to the board. I understand that this budget is for basically fast building operations. I'm wondering though, what could be some negatives, what we're talking about.
Sure. So I think that the best way to use it would be for projects. Sorry. We could, yeah, we can use it for projects. Other regions use it for projects. In fact, I think that I'll talk about it at the end, but if you look at our pipeline right now and carryover money, we're carrying over less monies for projects than we've ever carried over. So I think it's only $95,000. That's really one project. Potentially two small projects, but I think that absolutely that would be the best way to use it. And I think that we will get to that point during the fiscal year where we'll need to push that money over to projects.
Yes, sir. So just follow up. So two parts, first part. The money that's there now. The heard said if we wanted to use those funds for profit. Still have
No, so I was saying general, so projects is the standard way to use the capacity building money. I was saying for any other things, so last year we tried to do an urban land institute project summit, whatever we call it. It's kind of out of the scope of Go Virginia, so getting that approved could have been complicated, but no, for projects generally, it would not have, it would go through the normal approval process that project.
the second part. They're taking that money. Or sort of revenue generating sources, right? So that we have our own cash reserves. If when the state every year, that's great, but we're not depending on it, building up our own cash reserves. So we do have a size of the project, or we have the ability at some point to fund a bunch of small projects that is that. You sit on that cash, it's no consequences.
No, not to this point, and I mean, that would kind of be a question for you guys, in terms of trying to compound that reserve, I think that would not be allowable.
We don't have the money.
Right, I mean, right, yeah, exactly.
But we don't actually have the area for state.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I would worry, just as was mentioned earlier, if there happened to be a year of fiscal time for the state, and they look around all of Go Virginia, the entire Commonwealth, and we were sitting on 300,000 and Region 7 was sitting on 400,000 for an extended period of time, they would have every ability to say, okay, we're going to reach in,
Steals.
and take it far, we're going to cut your 250 down to 100 or 150. So I think that there would be a large risk in building that surplus up, that it could be taken.
Last question. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering, it's partially 95,000. So I continually struggle at every meeting, every time something aquaculture, agriculture, etc. So much of this is still like that. I mean, it's negative. It's a fact. I suppose in their program. I wonder if we could take part of that money and hire some early career $25,000, $40,000 money in science. As an assistant to you, whose job it is to try to coordinate all of these programs among the parties, because it's a huge industry in this region. And it represents a lot of potential for jobs and a range of jobs. So I wonder if you could ask that, yes, pros for that involved, it's been hard on us. Hard on us, we could get it together, you have strategy.
Could add to that, and I will tell you that significantly for our folks, those are not students. So we're doing something that's for the good of the community, but not necessarily college. So we would welcome something like that to almost get things together. This is very difficult for our folks to protect from partnerships.
That's a good point, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're a better place.
So it's that long one, so for long just $100 there it's $100, and that was also that and resources and others should
It's not just Eric, that's all the benefits. Yeah. Thanks for the big pieces.
You come up with into it.
I will, yeah, for sure. The only thing I will say is that, so two things, there becomes a bit of a difficulty in terms of what we can actually use money for outside of just project development. So it is a grant program, so some of this coordinating becomes, we try to do that, and we do that, but some of it's kind of outside of the lane that we're in to some extent. I will say one of the things we've been trying to do with Middle Peninsula Alliance is set up an industry association, because the coastal resiliency industry is burgeoning now in that area in the Northern Neck as well, and in fact, it's coming up to PD 16 as well. We've talked about establishing an industry trade association that could coordinate everything from workforce to legislative affairs to anything tangentially or directly related to economic development.
Got Shelton Harbors in Virginia, which is purely related. So I think there's a need for that, but I didn't know if there was a conversation about how those work in kingdom, or if that's a larger conversation.
So, yeah, so I mean, some of those conversations are kind of theoretical, and the way that the program is set up, we really have to have somebody like a PDC or a locality or a nonprofit lead those efforts. So at a certain point, it kind of goes out of our hands.
Sure.
But those conversations right now are generally kind of theoretical. In terms of a trade association relative to coastal resiliency, there's a model in Louisiana that we've been looking at, trying to replicate here. So the environmental side does cross over to aquaculture, but it is not necessarily directly related to aquaculture. Right. I think, one of the things we talked about with the aquaculture companies is how we also have a trade association or more of a cooperative that allows you all to extend your markets outside of what you're currently in, and really kind of aids and supports your distribution channels.
So I said, if the community colleges start to put together and said the product funding person to coordinate all the association activities, all the various agriculture projects going on.
Yeah, so we could potentially use Go Virginia's seed money to set up some kind of organization that has a person who leads that effort.
Get a mode.
I just want to folks in the way existing future. Said, and it's not the same as the trade system. So this is where I think I'm hearing all of this stuff to actually meet some together. Maybe it's a consulting project for us to see, or yes, that's the state consulting agriculture things, and there are others. Tax and others, but someone person needs to be brought in jobs. Take your.
You know? All, everyone could take, and we're regional, and that may be something that we may do. As part of our TPIs, because that coordinating person in one of something.
Sure. The only thing I'll add, Jack, I'm glad you said that. So Jackie's Talent Pathways Initiative does kind of try to break down these stovepipes. So there's that. We're also working, the workforce board is looking at additional grants that could be used as Go Virginia Match to continue that effort. And to Jackie's point, they represent the entire Go Virginia region. Their targeted industries are essentially our targeted industries, and aquaculture is a focus of the Talent Pathways Initiative, of which additional money will be allocated to. So we are kind of doing that in tandem with Jackie.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Okay, so this will, I'm gonna try to speed through the rest of this. So this is really straightforward. Basically, we can change our bylaws so that the quorum would be 1/3 as opposed to 1/2 full body. I have to bring that up to discussion for you guys before we could prove it, which would be at our next regional council meeting. So I'm just bringing that up now. Again, just straightforward. The quorum would go from 1/2 of the full body to 1/3 of the full body in person.
We can only discuss, gotta be in one meeting, but.
Just be ready.
Okay, so is there good for that meeting? Or the answer.
It's been a little bit of a challenge to get an in-person forum. I think that again, the size of our region's part of that, to get everybody together. Our next meeting in October will be 100% virtual, which makes it easier, but we do still have to have 2 in-person meetings a year. So it has been a bit of a struggle, yes.
And so our meeting in April, had we lost one person, we wouldn't have. And it's less relevant if we don't have an application, but when we do, it's obviously significant. Yeah, and the other thing too is that quorum, even if we have a hybrid meeting like today, that quorum is in person. It cannot include the folks who are on.
Third of the council vote. Okay. All right, next up, I think we are just 2 things. Both related to the same thing.
Yep, so the second part I'll let Todd handle, but we've been talking about the Regional Entrepreneurship Initiative for really about 2 years now, when we did the 2021 update to the Growth and Diversification Plan. So the Entrepreneurship Initiative is DHCG led, basically to select one entity to lead our entrepreneurial ecosystem building efforts. The Fredericksburg Regional Alliance has been playing that role. We sent out an RFP in 2021 for them to do some planning efforts as part of our G&D plan update, and they've been playing that role ever since. Todd has given us updates over the course of the whole time I've been here, but giving us updates in terms of establishing the Rivers Region Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Council. Their plans, and they've also done some activities that would be considered as implementation for this project. They've convened a lot of meetings with Dahlgren. That's been kind of a focus of our group. How do we commercialize some of the activity there, foster a closer relationship with them? So we would need to approve them as a convening entity. And then as a separate item, and Todd will talk to this, we'll need to approve their application. Which, as you'll see, is a little different than other Go Virginia applications. It's similar to the Talent Pathways Initiative in that way. but it is narrow in scope to the Regional Entrepreneurship Initiative.
Is this region wide, meaning all the counties?
It is, so it is the entire Go Virginia region.
Satisfied that it reached out to all counties around.
So that is something that came up in our call, and I'll let Todd address that further. One of the activities in this project, one of the main activities, this is largely a planning project, will include stakeholder meetings that take place throughout the entire Go Virginia region. They also have a board on their council that is representative of the region. So they have two folks from the private sector, one from the Northern Neck and one from the Peninsula.
Well, we've got to vote first.
Yeah. so-
Yeah, we have to vote
So
first.
we would first need to vote on them as the convening entity for this effort. And then we would vote on their application after Todd's.
Second. This is where
Right.
all in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Yeah. Yeah. They're all.
So just to reiterate, that was Joel, you abstained, and everyone else, there was no, everybody's abstained. Okay, thank you. All right. Yes, please.
Thank you guys for your time. Obviously, it's been a patient process. So I want to clarify thing we kind of get into the gap. That is, Fredericksburg Regional Alliance, serving as the coordinating entity. This is on behalf of the Rivers Region Entrepreneurs. That is now a separate 501c3 entity that has been by their assignment as a separate status, different organization, and the governing body that that council. It's all about how to engage the individual founders and in order that's this application decided by staff and council that we would engage in PBCs that are representing those. We're explaining that, and once the executive director comes on board, how we can leverage our councils to help us. That makes sense. For those. As it pertains to sort of the planning side of this, as we got discussed this a minute ago. Work, we did an ecosystem inventory report, we call it chapter report. It's provided just before the technology update, and I believe it's students assistance technology update for Region 6. And so what this new person will come in and do is take more of a detailed inventory of the assets that are here in Region 6 as they relate to all of the market clusters. Including aquaculture, all the partnership with BIMS and the existing, work that can be done. But then certainly also trying to figure out ways to partner mainstream businesses, they're not things. That's one thing that we need to make sure that we articulate in the application and answering questions. Having our own that businesses are not a part of the growth sector for Go Virginia. However, using aquaculture as a great example, they typically do start as small businesses that would be considered mainstream in terms of their revenue stream, but are have high capacity for scalability, right? Now that turn them into high businesses. Other traditional high businesses are not excluded from this. Certainly, as Tina mentioned, our engagement with Dowgren, NSF Dowgren, transfer initiatives. This is something that we a collaborating sort of facet in that, though the technology transfer initiative would not be hosted exclusively by the entrepreneur. So that being said, I know when we had discussed with council in the past, talking about doing a sort of a hybrid planning and implementation grant. We determined that it would be more prudent for us at this time to go full planning to build upon what we've already done. The information in the technology or technology report, as well as the chat study, to find better use implementation strategies moving forward that would engage all three subjects. And so that's what we're asking council to consider today in the application. I also want to point out that due to some of the timing here between Virginia Council, State Council, IRS designation. There are match verifications and letters of support that are still coming in today. Though we do have plan to have all of the match verification at the very least by the end of this, hopefully by the middle of this. So letters of support we have received from Northern Neck, chocolate chip, and some of them have to go to boards and councils for their approval. Though we don't suspect there being any real issues there, because the ones that we are citizens for letters for, we're not asking them for money yet. Will probably come up during implementation. But EDAs, we presented to them over the last 2 months or so. There are EDA members in a lot of the localities that have already allocated the funds to match. So we've been asked by 1 or 2 of them to come back to the EDA, give an updates that all of the council members familiar with the project, have any questions answered, and just maintain some comfortability, what the deliverables are. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but this is something in the application that you guys want to touch on, happy to discuss that.
See other.
So those entities will be engaged as a council works and all of the organizational structure and document. We did in one case to ahead of ourselves before we went after this application, to make sure that we have the funds necessary to support those activities and conversations. As you guys might know, the F4A. So we have to simply manage our capacity and make sure that we're leveraging the expertise in some of our tasks. So all of those coordinating entities that do exist already, we're going to absolutely collaborate with them, make sure that we can. This is program that they have, make sure that we're also not repeating efforts. So, for example, this TBCI. So, yes. One of the big drivers is making sure that we're able to specify them. So the ability for us to raise additional funds, and this will answer the sustainability question that might have. The ability for us to go after state, federal grants, local monies, and then private sector monies that they want, the tax benefit of donating to a 503 very tax for us and council guidance. So absolutely, we'll be going after some additional funds. That's going to be more into the implementation side. Some subsequent grant planning. However, not going to ignore our state and federal funds that are out there. Now 5 months now, 6 months now, certainly engaged.
Thank you. Well, thank you for encouraging this. I guess concern about taking flaws. I guess we're well past 2 years. This process. Build everything else.
It took the IRS 15 months to grant us because they should not stop any And then it's really changed the application's slow process. We did it during, COVID. You know, when you, and Anderson's do a lot of our organization director, they're great to work with. But a lot of it's out of our hands, so again, I got accounts for y'all stations. I know I came in very many times and said, yeah, we're so kind of handcuffed.
Have extended. We have a motion, thank you. Let's say, go.
I'll just, if they're both abstaining, we'll have to wait for Karen to get back to have an official.
No one's home. So you have-
Jan is online. Jan is online.
Yeah, I can vote.
I will have to do a roll call vote. We'll have to do a roll call vote since it's an application. Yeah. Did we have a second? Did we have a second? I'm sorry. There,
Yeah.
okay, thank you, Linda. Okay. Okay, Linda Hull, Lisa Hull, sorry. Dr. Ade. Renee Daniels. Bruce is sustaining. Shannon Kennedy. All right, Jan.
Yes.
Okay.
You're the only person online.
He's the only person online, yes. Yep. We're good.
I'm surprised.
Ian, you got 10 minutes.
Yeah, hopefully it'll take 5. So, you should have gotten emails about this. We're still putting together the speakers, but we're going to do a regional economic development stakeholder summit in January. So we're going to do a reception in Colonial Beach at their new co-working space, an old bank that they turned into a co-working space. And then we're going to do the actual event at UMW Dahlgren, and we're going to do a tour of the iLab at Dahlgren. Again, we're still putting the speakers together. The idea, though, is to have a keynote and then focus on site development, focus on workforce development, focus on kind of things we already focus on. So we're putting that together now. So just save the date for that. There's a flyer in your packet about that. I won't go through. So in terms of project pipeline, these are the same projects we've had in the pipeline, just a few. Site development, the RCC team, we've been talking with them about expanding the aquaculture project to your point, Rob. We've been working with the Virginia Black Business Directory on an accelerator program specifically to their audience. And then talking with Jason Learning and some of our K through 12 partners about doing another project. And then in terms of the current projects we have, you guys can see the update. Just for time's sake, I won't go through all of them. We have 13 projects ongoing right now. I'll just say the Tech Talent Pipeline project, Germanus project, will be closing out this month. That was started in 2021. That's really been, in tandem with their efforts and investment in cyber has been kind of critical in their involvement in that space. The Coastal Resiliency Project was extended. That'll end in Q1 of 2024. But again, all the other ones are on track. We had a slight hiccup with the Innovation Pathways initiative, which is the Stafford GQ project. That was more related to state funding for K through 12. We've navigated that. And all the other ones are underway and again, on track with their metrics. Only last thing I'll mention in terms of current projects, the Talent Pathways Initiative, Jackie's project, Mason and the work Ed team have already had roundtables with the aquaculture industry partners. He's been doing one-on-one meetings folks in other industries, and we'll have an additional round of roundtables later on this year. And that kind of sets us up for additional grant money through Co Virginia and elsewhere relative to talent pathways. So, but if you guys have any questions about any of the current projects, feel free to ask now.
Any funding,
Yes, it does. Yes. Yes. If every-
Yeah, so if everything were to hit, we'd still be short. Some of these projects, we've had discussions about them being statewide competitive projects. That's another thing that I won't make Andy explain it, but DHCD is trying to reconfigure the statewide competitive pot of money, which is separate from our allocation each fiscal year. So we've talked about some of these projects partnering with other Co Virginia regions. And it matches 2-to-1 for the statewide competitive. So the Stafford Regional Airport, that's potential for statewide competitive, and the RCC Careers in Aquaculture Implementation Project. Carrie mentioned this, but bringing in the Eastern Shore in that project, so that's statewide competitive.
any other part? What? So moved. All over favor, say aye. Aye, thank you. Yes, one is over there 14, then
It should be.
Next.